Graveyards are supposed to be silent, but some places breathe louder than the living. Tonight, the kind of fear we're stepping into doesn't warn you. It waits for you. 3 encounters, 3 people, and 1 place that never lets anyone leave the same. You're watching Scary Nights by Malik. Turn down the lights, take a breath, and if you're brave enough, come with me into the dirt, shadows, and restless whispers of the graveyard. They say the moors in Yorkshire are beautiful at dawn, soft gold light rising over miles of heather, the mist rolling low and gentle. But when night falls and the rain begins, that beauty changes. It becomes something else, cold, endless, and alive in a way it shouldn't be. On stormy nights, locals swear they hear a little girl crying in the church graveyard by the cliffs. No one goes there after dark anymore. Not since the crying started again. Daniel had heard the story in a pub in the next village, a cozy place where the fire crackled and the beer was warm. He was a photographer, not a believer in ghost stories. His work was in light and shadow, not superstition. Abandoned stations, silent chapels, forgotten cottages swallowed by ivy. That's what drew him across England. So when an old man at the bar told him about the crying child of St. Mary's, Daniel had laughed. A ghost who cries in the rain. Sounds like a perfect shot. He left just after midnight. The road to the moors was narrow and slick with rain. Wind screamed across the open fields, bending the grass like a sea of black waves. His headlights barely reached 10 yards ahead, the mist swallowing everything beyond. When the church finally appeared, it looked more like a shadow than a building, a crooked steeple jutting from the fog. Daniel parked beside the rusted iron gate, grabbed his camera, and stepped into the storm. The graveyard stretched before him, old, uneven ground littered with tilting stones, names worn away by 100 years of rain. The gate creaked behind him as he entered, its echo lost in the thunder. Each flash of lightning illuminated crosses, statues, and the gnarled skeletons of trees. He began to work, methodically, instinctively. Focus, adjust, click. Each flash of the camera froze the world in sharp fragments. The rain suspended midair, droplets like silver beads, his breath clouded in the cold. Then, just as he lowered the lens, he saw her, a small figure at the far end of the graveyard. She stood among the stones, barefoot, wearing a pale blue dress that clung to her shoulders. Her dark hair stuck to her face, heavy with rain. For a moment, Daniel thought she was real, a lost child, out in the storm. He raised a hand. "Hey, you okay?" His voice came out rougher than he meant. She didn't move. "Are you lost?" He tried again, stepping forward, boots sinking into the wet ground. The girl tilted her head as though listening to something only she could hear, and then she spoke. Her voice was faint, almost carried away by the wind. "Can you take me home?" Daniel froze. The rain seemed to hush, as if the whole moor were holding its breath. He lifted his camera, half out of reflex, and pressed the shutter. The flash burst. When the light faded, the girl was gone. Only the graveyard remained, grey, silent, and still. Heart hammering, Daniel stumbled forward to where she'd been standing. No footprints, no movement. Just a single gravestone behind the spot, cracked and blanketed in moss. He knelt, scraping the green away with trembling fingers. Emily Hart, died 1903, age 9. The storm roared back to life. Daniel ran, slipping through the mud until he reached his car. He didn't stop until he was back in his motel room miles away, dripping rainwater onto the carpet. For a long time he sat there, staring at his camera on the desk. Finally, he connected it to his laptop. He scrolled through the images, the church, the trees, the rows of headstones. Then the frame he'd taken when she'd asked the question. She wasn't in it, but there was something else. Behind the gravestone, faint but undeniable, was the outline of a small hand, pressed flat against the lens, as though it had reached for him in that instant of light. Daniel's chest tightened. He shut the laptop and turned off the light. Rain tapped against the window. He tried to convince himself it was just the storm, that his mind was tired, that he'd imagined the whole thing. Then he heard it. Drip, drip, drip. Water leaking from the ceiling. He climbed onto the bed to touch the damp spot above him. But when he looked down, he froze. On the white sheets beneath his feet were muddy footprints, small, bare. They led from the doorway to the window and ended there. The curtains swayed gently, though the window was shut tight. Outside, somewhere beyond the rain, came the faint sound of a little girl crying. And this time, Daniel didn't reach for his camera. He just listened. You ever notice how cemeteries sound different at night? It's not just the silence. It's heavier, thicker, like the air itself is listening. That's what Tom said the first night he worked at Ridgeview Cemetery in Virginia. He wasn't the superstitious type. Big guy, quiet, steady, the kind of man who thought any problem could be fixed with a wrench or a hammer. Maybe a little lonely since his wife passed, but kind, dependable. He took the caretaker job thinking it'd be easy work. Cut grass, fix fences, lock the gates at sunset. A job where no one bothered you and nothing unexpected happened. For the first few nights, it really was peaceful. He'd sit on the porch of the caretaker's cabin, sipping coffee that steamed in the cold air, watching fog roll across the gravestones. The headstones stretched as far as he could see, rows of pale marble glowing faintly under the moonlight, names fading into the mist. Sometimes he heard owls from the trees beyond the fence, sometimes the faint hum of the highway miles away. But mostly, it was still, so still, that when the night got quiet enough, he could hear his own heart beat. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late, maybe 2 a.m, when Tom heard something strange, a soft murmur drifting through the fog. At first, he thought it was the wind moving through the trees or water trickling under the hill, but no, this was different. It had rhythm, cadence, like words. He frowned, leaned forward, listening harder. "Hello," he called, breath fogging the air. No answer. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped off the porch. The beam cut through the mist in a shaky cone, slicing across headstones. His boots sank into the damp earth as he walked. The sound came again, whispering, faint but clear. It rose and fell, moving from grave to grave. Tom's nerves prickled. Who's out there? Still nothing, but the voices grew louder, overlapping, tangled, like a dozen people murmuring all at once. Soft, pleading, ancient. Tom's heart hammered. "All right. Not funny," he muttered. His breath came in short clouds. The air had turned icy, heavier with every step. Then, silence. The whispering stopped, and the ground trembled. He looked down. The soil in front of a headstone was moving. At first, just a ripple, subtle. Then it began to rise, bulging upward, as if the earth itself was breathing. Tom stumbled back, light shaking in his hand. The dirt swelled once more, then went still. He waited, frozen. the world holding its breath. But nothing else happened. He turned and ran. He bolted for the cabin, slammed the door and locked it. His chest heaved. He backed into a corner, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. Every creak of the wood, every brush of wind made him flinch. He sat there until sunrise. When he finally stepped outside, the grave looked disturbed, uneven, soft, as though someone had dug it up and filled it again. He drove to town and told the old groundskeeper what he saw. The man smiled gently and said, "You've been working nights too long, son. I'll take a look." That evening, Tom returned, half expecting to find the earth torn open. But the grave looked perfect. Flat, smooth, untouched. No footprints, no marks. Still the air felt wrong, heavy, charged, like a storm about to break. That night, Tom tried to shake it off, told himself he was tired. Maybe it was animals or the fog playing tricks. He brewed tea, sat by the window, and watched the mist roll back in. At midnight, the whispering returned, louder this time. Circling the cabin, Tom froze. A woman's voice said his name. He tightened his grip on the flashlight. "Who's there?" Something brushed against the door, slow, deliberate. A scraping sound, fingernails dragging across wood. Then silence. Tom sat awake till dawn, his pulse pounding like a drum. When the first light broke over the trees, he packed his bag, left the keys on the table, didn't tell anyone why, didn't even collect his pay. A week later, the town hired a new caretaker. He went through the records to check which grave Tom had reported. There was only one new burial that month, a headstone placed October 7th. The name on it read, Thomas Grady, born 1968, died October 7th, 2022. The same date Tom went missing. And if you walk through Ridgeview after midnight, when the fog's thick and the air starts to hum, some say you can still hear his voice calling softly through the dark, asking if you'll stay a while and keep him company. They say there's a stretch of road in rural Louisiana that winds through the swamps like a black ribbon, quiet, slick, and always a little too dark. And right where that road bends, there's an old graveyard the locals call Lantern Hill. Nobody goes there after midnight, not anymore. Truckers passing through tell the same story, that if you drive by in the dead of night, you'll see a lantern bobbing between the gravestones. They say a man walks there, searching for something. If you stop, he disappears. If you don't, he follows. It was just another rainy Thursday when Corey Dalton, a refinery worker from Lafayette, took that road home. The highway had flooded earlier in the week, and Lantern Hill Road was the only route open. He was tired, 12 hours on his feet, eyes stinging from exhaustion, and the low fuel light on his truck had been glowing since the last gas station 10 miles back. Outside, the night was heavy with rain, the kind that turns the air into steam and the world into reflections. Spanish moss hung low over the road, swaying with the wind like gray curtains. The engine hummed, the wipers squealed. Then he saw it, a light, faint, orange, and moving between the trees. Corey squinted through the rain-streaked windshield. The light swayed, dipping and rising as though someone were walking. He slowed the truck, tires hissing over the wet gravel. The glow drifted toward the road, then stopped, hanging in the dark like it was waiting for him. He rolled down the window an inch, the smell of wet earth and swamp water seeping in. "Hey!" he shouted over the rain. "You need help?" The lantern flickered once, then twice, and then it moved. Fast. Corey slammed on the brakes, his seatbelt jerking tight across his chest. The light surged forward, growing brighter, closer. It filled the cab with orange glare, burning into his vision. For one split second, he saw the figure holding it. An old man, coat soaked black, face pale as moonlight, eyes hollow as the graves behind him. The man's mouth moved, his voice barely a whisper through the rain. "Light the way. I can't find the road." Corey's blood ran cold. He hit the gas. The tires spun, caught, and the truck lurched backward, fishtailing through the mud. The lantern chased him, flickering wildly, keeping pace with the truck. It filled the rearview mirror with fire. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone. Corey drove until the road straightened and the swamp gave way to open fields. He didn't look back, but as he slowed near a crossroads, something in the mirror made his breath catch. Behind him, between the trees, a line of lights was flickering. Not one, but dozens. Lanterns swaying in the rain, forming a slow procession down the road. They looked like a funeral march. Corey gripped the wheel tighter and pressed the accelerator. The lights stayed behind, fading into the mist as he sped away. By the time he reached home, it was almost 3 a.m. His driveway glistened under the rain. The porch light was already on, glowing faintly through the downpour. He killed the engine, heart still thudding, and stepped out. The rain was colder now, quieter. As he approached the door, he noticed the light looked strange, dimmer, warmer. He frowned. The bulb wasn't white, it was orange, and hanging from the hook above his door wasn't his porch light at all. It was a lantern, old, rusted, still burning. Corey staggered back, breath catching in his throat. His reflection wavered in the glass of its cracked lens, and behind him, for just an instant, he thought he saw other lights moving at the edge of his yard. Faint glows weaving between the trees. He didn't wait to find out. He slammed the door shut, locked it twice, and turned off every light in the house. But as he stood there in the dark, chest heaving, the faint smell of smoke and wet moss filled the air. They still tell the story of Lantern Hill. Some say it was just swamp gas or headlights reflecting on the rain. Others say Corey's lantern burned on his porch for 3 nights straight before it finally went dark. And on certain nights, when the fog rolls off the bayou and the wind rattles the reeds, drivers still swear they see him, a man walking the bend, lantern in hand, forever searching for the road he lost. So if you ever find yourself on that stretch after midnight, and you see an orange light drifting through the graves, don't stop. Don't look back. Because sometimes the dead don't want company. They just want someone to take their place.